Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation or around the world. My name is Shane Skwarek, and on behalf of SFX.com Small Business Solutions, I am back once again with another one of our Small Business Tech Tips Live right here on Facebook Watch. And I'm back again this week to spare you from yet another wacky Netflix documentary that you generally just wouldn't watch at any other point in your normal life, if even only for a half an hour. Today, I'm joined by Tim Phillips. Tim has over a decade and a half of sales, project management, and executive training experience working for large retail giants. But despite working for such massive companies, who we'll talk about a little bit later, Tim's approach to building out his store was on a very localized scale. I thought his experience and incredible expertise could be invaluable tools for you, our small business owners and entrepreneurs, as you look for ways to build and sell your own business. Tim, it's been a long time that we've known each other. I thank you for joining us today.
Likewise, yeah. I thought you were going to say it's been a long time since we talked. I was going to say that's a lie.
It hasn't been a long time since we talked. Yeah, I mean, fortunately for me, I get to talk to you pretty often, and if not every single day. But yeah, I mean, I think we go back easily over 10 years, maybe 20 now. Oh my goodness.
Just about.
Yeah, probably too long for the both of us, but we haven't killed each other yet, so that's a good sign.
Yep.
So, I talked a little bit about kind of in our intro here, you've got a lot of experience working in retail giants, literally doing everything. I mean, you can jump into it here in a second, but
sure.
You started as a registrar or a stock boy, and you built yourself all the way up to working in corporate as project manager for next generation stores for Bed Bath & Beyond is the big surprise there. Tell me a little bit about your background, your experience, and kind of how you got to where you are.
Yeah, sure. So, kind of unlikely, if you will. Really, it started, I was a kid. I needed a job, and it all started with Staples. To your point, it really was just a stock boy, right? So I was gathering shopping carts and putting out pens and, you need some copy paper. I was the guy that brought you the copy paper, and that's kind of really where it all started. At that point in time, this is going back over 15 years, Staples sold a ton of office furniture. And so, like any other retailer, right, you're cross-trained to do multiple things within the store. And long story short, not that I have many short stories, but I'll make this one as short as I can. Long story short, I wound up selling furniture. And I found out, wow, this is something I'm really good at. I enjoy the art of the sale. I love communicating with customers, and I found that fun. And so I did that for some time until I realized that the real sales really came from technology, right? This was when, this is back when a laptop cost you, $1,500.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You couldn't just click something on. There really wasn't an Amazon, right? There was, but I think they sold CDs and books. That's it.
Yeah, literally CDs and books.
Yeah, right? So when you needed to buy technology, you really had to go to, right, your Staples, your Best Buys. You needed to go into a brick and mortar store, and you really needed to speak to somebody who knew about it. And so I knew nothing about technology at that point in time, right? I mean, you and I were friends, then, and you knew about tech. I certainly knew nothing about it, but I taught myself everything that I needed to know, right? I would just hop on Google. Yes, Google was around. And I would just look things up about computers, right? What is RAM? What is a processor? What's a motherboard? And I really kind of taught myself everything that I needed to know to sell technology, a lot more than I just made it seem. And that's really where it started. And so from that point on, after, just being an associate selling technology, I became eventually a sales manager for Staples, which was primarily, like I said, really around the technology portion.
Sure.
Yep. As well as services and warranties and, anything that you would.
Right, everything that sort of falls in line with it as you're selling different products.
You need to sell in that kind of an environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then from that point, I found another opportunity with Bed Bath & Beyond. It was the last place that I ever thought that I would work, really, to tell you.
Well, it seems like it's such a weird transition, too, to go from Staples, which is mostly office supplies, technology-based services, to Bed Bath & Beyond, which is now, your home goods and furnishings, literally bedrooms, bathrooms. It feels like it's such a weird transition. But really, in the workload, it's probably not.
No, it wasn't. And from a workload perspective, and this is not what I had anticipated. It certainly increased. And, I think I had maybe walked into a Bed Bath & Beyond twice, once being my interview prior, to position with them. And so I really didn't know much about their business, to tell you the truth. And when I walked in, I really thought that it was going to be a piece of cake. I thought, man, I got this. I own this, right? I'd already progressed and really built a quasi career at that point in time for myself with Staples. And so I thought that would be a walk in the park. But once I got to a bigger box retailer, right, because Bed Bath is much larger than Staples, not only in terms of store count, but also in terms of the actual physical box itself,
right?
Which is also going to increase employee count and things of that nature. It was certainly a drastic change. So, so I went to Bed Bath & Beyond. I worked in stores for them from a customer trainer perspective, which took on a big portion of training and really training folks not to just service customers, but really to sell, which was good because I had a pretty affluent background, coming from Staples as a sales manager with them.
Right.
After some time in the stores, I took on a district level position with them as a district customer service trainer, which was definitely eye-opening, right? I had never managed a multi-level or a multi-store location. I started out with 9, and by the time I was done, it was almost 40.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. Yeah.
So it was quite a jump there.
That's a huge jump to go from 9 stores to 40.
Well, it wasn't 9 directly to 40. It was 9.
Right.
And then pick up another district, and then it was 13, and then it was now you've got 20 stores, and before you know it, it was 40 stores.
Yeah, wow. Even over a short period of time. I mean, you were only with Bed Bath & Beyond for maybe 10 years altogether?
Not even. I was with them for I was about 6.5 years.
Wow. So, I mean, that's an incredible amount of confidence they have in you to kind of throw that amount of responsibility on your shoulders in, I mean, what I would view as a short period of time. Maybe people in the industry would laugh at me for saying that, but I mean, that seems like a big jump.
Right, and not only that, but mind you, I was not in that role when I started with the company. I didn't take that position until I was literally with the company for 2 years.
Wow.
So you think, right?
Yeah, so even less. Yeah.
4, really, right?
Right.
And kind of jumping forward after performing in that level, and that was also not only was it 40 stores, but it was through different districts in different states as well.
Wow.
From that point, I then moved on to, as you mentioned earlier, project manager of Next Generation Stores. So prior to the current regime at Bed Bath & Beyond, there was a very specific vision, which was drastically different from what you would think of as a Bed Bath & Beyond today, both in product category and the way that the store operates, and you name it from top to bottom. If you walked into one of those stores, you wouldn't think that you were in a Bed Bath & Beyond. You would think that you were in a more upscale Home Goods or Home Sense,
right.
If you will. And we certainly, modeled ourselves, if you will, after that. But in terms of the way that a Bed Bath & Beyond operated, it was completely different. And so I was very fortunate to join that team. And that was a lot of fun. Because these stores were so different, we had to literally write everything from the ground up. So, we wrote operating procedures, trainings on, how to merchandise this, how to merchandise that, how to sell in the department. Everything was so different that we really needed to give the associates that were working in those stores, we needed to empower them with the knowledge to execute at a high level. And so we had to literally rewrite everything from the ground up.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. just the scale of doing something like that, and then even being able to roll it out a little bit and kind of see, your baby, so to speak, get this new life as you're rolling these stores out. That's got to feel pretty good.
Yeah, no, it was really cool. And, the store counts grew. When I joined the team, there were 20 some odd stores. And by the time we had finished with that project, we were at, oddly enough, the number 40 is going to come again. We were at exactly 40 stores.
Yeah, wow.
Once we commenced that project. And the goal of it was to not necessarily roll those stores specifically as they sat to chain, right? But it was to take pieces that worked, that we knew worked well, and then apply those to the chain. Right.
Well, jumping back a little bit, I mean, you were talking about kind of really a lot. You covered a lot of ground in such a quick period of time. So, jumping back a little bit about sales, I think, in a lot of the small businesses we deal with, a lot of entrepreneurs, I think that seems to be the biggest struggle. Everyone always says, I've got this really great idea. I know how to execute my idea. I know how to build my idea, but I don't know how to sell my idea. Right. Sometimes it's a lack of knowledge, which, you said it yourself. The research is really the key right there. If you do the research and keep looking into it, you can learn about your product and go from there. But in the instance of creating your own product, sometimes all that stuff.
Sure.
What were the tips, you have three beautiful children, and I've been around you numerous times, and you have been a pro at explaining even the wackiest, zaniest things to them in such simple terms that they can understand. So position yourself, you're talking to your kids right now, and you're teaching them, these are the essentials right now on how you make a sale or how you can learn how to become a better salesperson. What would you say those essentials would be?
So I would say, and there's certainly a lot that we could cover, and there's many different techniques and things that you could do. I would say for me, the most important thing is to get as much information from your customer, whoever that might be, whether that's the consumer, whether that's the business, right? This could be business to customer, business to business. Get as much information during the conversation as you possibly can out of that individual or group of individuals, because the more information that you have, you then can leverage that information to validate your points on why what it is that you're selling is going to benefit that individual, right? So if we're talking, business to customer, right?
Sure.
And I want to sell you, let's go back to my bed bath phase. I want to sell you cookware, right? And I've got a $100 set of cookware, and I've got a $900 set of cookware. And I'm going to ask you, what do you like to cook? Right? And you're going to ramble off all these things that you like to cook, right? I like to make steak. I like bacon. I like eggs, right? Everything you think about cooking, right? Me, I know that the $100 set and the $900 set, they're going to do all of that, right? One's going to cook it just as well as the other one's going to cook it.
Right.
But once I know what you're cooking, I can tell you, hey, based upon what you told me, this set right here, the $900 set, is going to be able to cook your eggs. It's going to be able to cook your bacon. It's going to be able to cook blah, 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 right? Whatever it might be that you told me. And now I'm validating, right?
Right.
All of my recommendations because I'm using the information that you told me. Right?
That's interesting. Yeah.
So
we're validating is actually perfect. Creating a nice little bond with them right there.
Right. So when I can go ahead and I can repeat the information that you gave me, and I could use it in a terms that validates my recommendation, that really lends credibility to what you're doing. And I know, kind of stepping back for a second and not to say, that not that we're lying to our customers, right? We looked at the $100 set, we looked at the $900 set, but knowing what you want to sell that individual, right? And being able to use the information that you found out to leverage that, really, that at the end of the day, that's the crux of it.
I definitely don't see it as something lying. I deal with the same stuff with websites. Sorry, I'm mumbling my words here. A lot of times people come to me and they're like, what's the difference between buying a website from you or buying, the $99 one from Wix or Squarespace? And on the very simple, basic, most mundane answers, there is no difference. If you want to get on the internet, you can pay the $99 to things. Of course, quality comes into a factor later down the line. And you're right, it does make a lot of sense that, it really depends on the type of person and the type, their cash flow even. I think you can probably gauge a lot of that stuff too in having that conversation. If they're sitting there and they're only cooking scrambled eggs every single day, maybe they're working a little bit more on a college budget. But if they're cooking steaks and filet mignons and all of a sudden, all right, we got a little more money to spend too. So that certainly helps. And
to your point, I'm sure that there's different levels of, I don't know if you want to call it a package or levels of service that you can provide a customer with that you would then, you qualify them after that conversation, then you can go ahead and make that recommendation, right? Just like there's a vast difference between the $100 and the $900, right?
Right, exactly.
That $9 first.
But, of course. You want to actually make money. And I think that's sometimes one of the big drawbacks a lot of people have when they're selling their businesses. And myself included, when I first started doing a lot of this stuff, I was giving away websites for, $300. And it was probably costing me $500 to do it in terms of time. I was paying myself probably $4 an hour. I could have worked a minimum wage job at $7. But, you're trying to build that portfolio. I think a lot of businesses sort of fall into that trap where they're underselling themselves because they don't really value themselves that much. And you sort of have to value yourselves at that $900 piece of cookware because that's the only way other people are going to actually decide to pay you that. They're going to know if you're worth that by the way you sell yourself.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but, and to your point, right. And this is, an old philosophy when it comes to sales, right? You should always start high. Right. It's just like negotiating anything, right? You're negotiating salary for a new position, whatever it might be. Same thing in sales. You're always going to start high because if I don't start high, I'm never going to get you to that point. Right. If I start in the middle, it's really, if I sell you on the middle piece, well, it's really difficult for me to then go ahead and upsell you to anything higher, because if
Yeah.
I sold you on the middle already and that's perfect for me, why would I want to spend any additional dollars with you if that middle piece, no matter what it is that you're selling, right? You know, if that already works. So you always want to start at the high end and then work your way down based upon, you know, the responses from your customer, whoever that might be.
So, you know, I think a lot of the times in sales too, you're probably facing a ton of rejection. You're going to start at the high end because obviously you don't want to sell the best product. And I'm sure, I mean, you can speak to this pretty clearly. More often than not, you're probably going to get no's before you get a yes. How do you kind of deal with that? How do you weigh that? How do you kind of weigh the rejection and bounce back and have the confidence to still be able to close that deal?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of different techniques. And granted, it's different based upon what it is that you're actually selling. You know, there are little phrases, if you will, that you can come up with, or that are already existing, right? You know, one of them is called feel, felt, found. You know, which is pretty much just like, you know, you say to the customer, hey, I understand how you feel. You know, many other people have felt the same way, but what they found is, right? And then you can go on and continue with your pitch. So there's different things like that you could do. What I have certainly used that before. What I like to use a little bit better is to find out from the customer what it is that they dislike about what it is that you're offering, right? So hey, what is it? What part of what I'm offering to you doesn't do you not see value in, right? You know, what is it that you don't like about this piece of, you know, XYZ, you name it, and finding out what they don't like about it. And you as the, you know, the business owner or the product owner, whatever it might be, you're already the expert on it, or if you aren't, you should be. And then you can go ahead and then make your rebuttal after that. So, you know, anybody that's been in the sales game for a long time is you know, they should know, or they do know, that rejection is just, you know, that's a part of it.
It's part of the game.
And yeah, exactly. And so you've got to have those backups, if you will, and just ask the right questions and find out why the customer doesn't see the value, or what it is that they dislike about the product or the service or whatever it might be that you're selling them, so that you can go ahead and refute that.
It's great. It's great. Yeah. So, you know, you talked a little more too earlier about training. You did a lot of training. You wrote training materials from the ground up. That tends to be, and I think another point of contention when you're running a business is, you know, your mind is just so wrapped up in the day-to-day of actually executing the business that sometimes when people make hires, which is a huge jump, you know, it's a huge load of responsibility and a huge risk, really. They're afraid to invest too much time into training those people properly. Your experience, obviously, in the training industry, you know the value of it. How would you sort of qualify or quantify, rather, that training in the beginning, and kind of the importance of developing those new employees and empowering them to be able to do these jobs on themselves? Yeah.
Well, you know, I'll start out by saying that is not training your associates, employees properly is the biggest mistake that you could possibly make in running and selling your business. And I've also, there's a fine line between running your business and managing your business and actually working in it. And I know, especially when it comes to a small business perspective, that's very gray. And I know those paths cross all the time, but you really need to keep, especially, you know, when you start to make hires and, you know, you're hiring these folks to execute something that's very specific for you. And you need to be able to entrust those folks with the responsibility to execute that. And you need to be able to give up that control and walk away.
Right. Yeah.
So
that's
that you're
important,
not working so much in your business and you're working on growing your business.
Yeah.
So it's incredibly important. You know, when it comes to that, and not only that, but you can't expect folks they're not going to be successful, right? If you don't train somebody properly, there is no way that they're going to be successful in that role. Especially you as the business owner, as the manager, if they don't understand clearly what your expectations are, and if you don't train them to understand what your expectations are and how to execute that position, how could you expect them to, you know, from a fair perspective, how could you expect them to execute that at the level that you want them to?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. You know, is there like a benchmark at some point where you can kind of say, all right, I've given it all I've got for this particular person, now I've got to give up? Or even a benchmark the other way is, you know, this is what I need to do to make sure this person is ready. Is there a timeline or a certain amount of training involved, or does it kind of fluctuate from person to person?
It's certainly, it's going to fluctuate from person to person. You know, we'll start on the first end of your question, you know, when you look at somebody and say, hey, I've given them all I've got, yeah, that's going to happen, right? That's absolutely going to happen. From and throughout my many years experience, right, as a manager in different roles for different companies, there's a lot of that, right? And what I've found that has always helped me kind of really clearly define where that benchmark is. And I couldn't say that I could necessarily put a time on it, but if I need to go back, right, and let's say that I have trained somebody on how to do something, I validate, and that's a big piece that misses too, right? So a lot of folks don't understand that I might train you on how to execute a position, right, no matter what it is, but they miss that validation piece, right, and that they're validating that you actually understood it, and not just understood it, but the way that you want them to understand it, because my perception of one thing and your perception of the exact same thing might be completely different. So after I've gone ahead and I've trained you on how to execute your role, or, maybe it's just I trained you on some different phrases that I want you to use when you go ahead and sell. I need to actually practice that with you, right? So it's not just sitting you down and telling you that. I'm actually going to go ahead and practice with you. I'm going to have you repeat it back to me until I'm blue in the face and you say it exactly like I want you to say it. Right? After I've done that, then I know I've truly trained you the right way. Now I need to go ahead and then validate that training, and I need to either check up on you, right? So maybe if it's, let's talk from obviously I do a lot of sales. So from a sales perspective, right? Maybe that person's on the phone with a client, and maybe I'm listening in, through some way, shape, or form, and I'm actually listening to that conversation, whether it be recorded or live. And that's my validation piece to see, okay, I know I trained Shane on how to do this. We role played it. He said exactly what I wanted him to say. Now I'm actually going ahead and I'm validating that.
That's an interesting point, that just talking about having somebody kind of take the lead on a sales call with you listening in. I've again, my own experiences, I had turned over my sales to some colleagues way back in the day. Mike Barclay, that's a shout out for you. And he killed it. When he was transitioning into a new role, I had him sort of do the same types of things with the other people that I was trying to transition to the role. It didn't work out so well. For me at the time, it didn't really matter, because those types of jobs that were coming in were in excess for our business. But, in other instances, I've spoke to businesses, and that's, again, another big fear is, I know my business. I know how to sell this product. I sacrificing this job now by letting somebody else try to close the call and me listening in. And is that something people should be worried about? Should they be worried about, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, nickel and diming each and every sale in fear of losing it and subsequently not training their employee the right way? If that makes sense. It's a little wordy.
No, I got you. And hey, look, right, when you give up those reins, right, if you will, it is, it could be scary. It could be uncomfortable, right? Because to your point, you're the expert and you know everything there is about your business because it's your business. So yeah, for sure. There is certainly potential to kind of lose out a little bit here and there, but you have to have trust. And through training, and training doesn't stop after I've gone ahead and I've trained you and I validated, I followed up and I validated that you are, right, you're saying what I want you to say, or you're doing this correctly or that correctly. But there is my goodness, there is growth and coaching and continued development is the word I was looking for. But there's always development, right? So I could train you to do a specific job the right way, and you may do a very good job at doing that. But there's always room for development. So to your point, for sure, you might lose a little bit, but as you continue to develop that person, and the art of whatever it is that you're developing them in, they're going to get better and better. And you also have to keep in mind that not everybody's going to do or say something the exact same way that you do and or say it. It does not mean they're not going to be as successful in that role.
Yeah, I think that's a lot to kind of think on too, because I feel like for sure people take this stuff really close to heart, and if you're not regurgitating what I'm telling you, it's like, you must be doing it wrong. But the whole purpose,
in sales, especially from this perspective, certain set of words, you might like to use a different set of words,
right?
So from a sales perspective, because sales is all about speaking, and it's really more about listening than it is speaking. But
that's a good point. I like that line. More about listening than speaking. I feel like people are definitely reading off scripts. And that was the challenge I had when trying to bring in salespeople when I was, aggressively trying to go for business early on, is I would write scripts a lot of the times for people. And it was like, if then, if this, then that type scripts.
I've done that.
And it was like, I'm not a sales guy by any stretch of the imagination. I can sell my business because I'm confident in the product I'm doing, but I'm not going to sell you on it if you don't need it. I'll be the first one to tell you, yeah, you don't need to, you can go buy that $100 website because you really don't need this. It's not worth it. Probably to my detriment, but the scripts I felt like were so, and you can tell because it's just so, bland and just awful. But
I'd say that an outline is okay, right? You would, some kind of a rough outline and maybe necessarily not even a script, but maybe some bullet points of features and benefits and things like that.
That makes sense.
That's useful. But a script that you want somebody to recite verbatim, to your point, is going to be bland. It's going to sound cheesy, and it's not going to sound genuine. And when your customer senses that you're not being genuine, you're not going to get that sale.
They're gone. Yeah,
you have to be genuine in your work, and you need to give people the freedom to use their own words and to use their own style. Everybody's style is different. I'm a very energetic guy, right? The way that I sell is to know you and to talk to you, and I move around a lot, and that's the way that I do it. But I'll tell you what, we hired somebody that I 100% disagreed with. I interviewed the person. I spoke to somebody else, and I said, absolute no-go. I went on vacation. I came back, and he was hired, and my mind was blown. I'm like, are you kidding me? You hired that guy? One of the best associates we've ever had. Wow. And the reason why I didn't want to hire him, he was very mellow. He was very meek, almost, if you will.
Right.
And was just vastly different from my style. And I thought, no way that this guy's going to work out. But everybody has their, everybody has their own style. And this guy was absolutely fantastic. Absolutely.
Maybe it's like a comfort level too with the customer is, maybe they're not drawn to somebody that's very boisterous and energetic because they're timid themselves. So maybe somebody a little more mellow, kind of gives them that level of comfort where they're like, I can talk to this guy and not feel as pressured in such a way.
And hey, right, there's, and there's lots of, to your point, there's lots of other tricks that you could use when you're interacting with the customer, reading their body language. And, when you are a seasoned sales professional, when you read body language and you listen to cues, things that they say, you can change and adapt your style in the middle of that conversation and say, hey, maybe I should not present in the way that I'm.
Oh, that's interesting.
Back a little bit. So, if somebody's, being very closed off and, they're looking down at the ground, they've got their arms crossed, a lot of times I'll back up and go, okay, maybe this specific approach that, I'm using right now isn't necessarily working, and let me kind of switch it up, and maybe I will speak a little bit more mellow. And maybe, it's not always that you have to completely change everything that you're doing, but it just brings a little bit more clarity to the situation, and it slows you down a little bit, if you will. It certainly slows you down and makes you think about what's occurring in that interaction, and you can kind of change up things that you're doing to help go ahead and close that sale too. So that's a good point.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Tim, if you had, let's call it 3 tips, 3 major things for all people to consider, whether they're entering a sales career, running their own business, selling a product, whatever it might be. 3 tips, easy to execute. What would they be for anybody listening out there?
Sure. So number 1, you have to be the expert, right? So whether it be from a sales perspective, right, I need to be the expert in whatever it is that I'm selling. And if I don't know it inside and out, I'm not going to be able to truly sell it because I can't be genuine about it. And when you're not genuine, you're not going to make that sale. So you need to absolutely be the expert. And when it comes to your own business, right, and it doesn't matter what business it is, right, you're selling your business, right? Somebody has to buy that product, whether it's a service, and I can't actually touch what you're selling, Shane, right? Because it's online. It's I don't want to say it's not real, but it's not tangible.
Right.
Or I'm selling you a piece of paper, right? Everybody's selling something. So you need to 100% be the expert in whatever it is that you're selling, or that you're operating or that you're doing. You have to know it inside and out. That would certainly be number 1 for me. You have to absolutely master it. From a sales perspective, like I mentioned earlier, and I don't want to reiterate exactly what I said, but you need to listen. Selling is really, it's 80% listening and 20% speaking. And when you're the expert in what it is that you're selling, and I do a really good job of actively listening to you and letting you know that I'm listening to you, which makes you more comfortable, and I gain all of that information that I need, I can then take what you said to me, I can take a look at what it is that I'm selling you, and I can let you know how that applies to you and how it's going to benefit you. So when I do a really good job, or when you do a really good job of listening, and asking as much questions as you can to get as much information that you can, you're going to be better off. That really is one of the biggest keys to selling. And, there's a lot more to it. I would say that's the most important one. And that's where most folks That's where most folks kind of lack, is really in the active listening department.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would say ownership. You really need to own what it is that you're doing, like it's your own business. Right now, obviously, right, for somebody who's, who has their own business and
For
they're
sure.
running a business, there's a lot of ownership, but in some scenarios there's not. Right. If you are, taking on a role at whatever company and whatever position it might be, you need to think that this is, when I worked for Bed Bath & Beyond, or I worked for Staples, that wasn't Bed Bath & Beyond, it wasn't Staples, that was my business.
Right.
It was me. I was selling my product, right? I thought of it as if though this was my store and I personally, bought everything in here and I'm going to be the one to sell it. I personally hired everybody here with the money out of my own pocket, and I'm going to train them to be better associates to make my business more successful.
Right.
And for folks that are running their own business, they obviously need to, they need to think that same way as well. And that's something that I learned a long time ago is really having ownership, of your company and of your business, or your role, if you will, is really going to make you successful.
Yeah, that's awesome. You have something on the line to lose when you think like that too. You
Sure.
feel like if you lose that sale, or if you botch something along the lines, that it's going to directly reflect you. And in some cases it does, but in other cases sometimes it doesn't. But
no, absolutely.
as long as you feel that way.
Yeah.
Tim, I know it's a kind of a crazy and chaotic and busy time right now, but I do appreciate the time just sitting down with us and chatting. I hope people out there listening got something from this. Think about these things, particularly the training stuff. That really resonates with me. It was a big point of contention for me when I was trying to grow my business on how to really properly train people. And just, know that they're there to alleviate the burden of your own workday, your own workload. So kind of let go of that a little bit. I can't give you any sales advice at all. That's what Tim's here for. If you want to find him, hop on LinkedIn, look up Tim Phillips, and I'll post it on the screen for you guys here in post-production. So as you guys are watching that, you can check that out. Again, hope you guys enjoyed it. You can find me at s-fx.com or on all the social media channels, sfx.com. We will see you again next time.
If you want to help your business grow, SFX is the only way to go. From SEO and branding to website design, visit s-fx.com.